Hi, I'm Bob Balch, and I am juror number 8 in the Michael Lawrence Pousson trial here in Jefferson County, Texas. He is accused of basically raping a little girl from the time she was 5 years old to 7 years old. The allegations are that it took place in 2 counties, Orange County, Texas, and Jefferson County, Texas. Jefferson County is where I live, so this is where the trial is taking place. Also, the defendant is more than 17 years old. The alleged victim is younger than 14, and this happened for more than 30 days, so all of that equals a specific crime on the Texas statutes. All I know is it's pretty big deal because the minimum sentence is like 20 or 25 years, and the maximum sentence is 99 years, basically life. If he gets the maximum sentence, he'll be dying in prison. And so, and we have to decide whether or not he's guilty or not guilty by a beyond a reasonable doubt. And so that's a daunting task, and it's one that I don't take lightly. And I'm making these videos so that you can see how this is the That's Jesus channel, so you can see how a Christian man is approaching these responsibilities in 2023, and just how much it affects you when you realize how important this is. And so if you look at the description, you'll find the other videos that I've made. I've been making video every evening as I get home, talking about the testimony every day. And today, my previous video, I'm making 2 videos today because the testimony ended. All the evidence was presented, both the prosecution and the defense rested, and now we're getting ready to, as the jurors go and try to make a decision. Before we do that, though, the judge has to read the charges. And a written copy of those charges was given to us in the jury room, but it is a several-page document that outlines exactly what has to take place for there to be a guilty verdict, and exactly what the crime is, and all the stipulations for that crime to be considered the crime that the defendant was accused of. And so basically this is it. The prosecution has to prove several things. Has to prove that it was the defendant that did these acts, that they were sexual acts, also that those acts had to take place for more than 30 days, and that those acts had to take place at least partially in Jefferson County, Texas. And then there's another charge, a lesser charge, and this one is basically sexual assault. And it's not as serious. It's a serious charge, but the sentence is not nearly as long as the first one. And then the other option, the third option, is if you don't choose the hardcore charge or the secondary charge, is not guilty. And those are the only 3 options. And the jury has to come up with a unanimous decision. There's 12 people on the jury. And so those were the instructions written out and read to us by the judge. And then we have the closing arguments, and the prosecution gets to choose whether they want to go first or last. And the prosecution said, "Well, I'm going to go last because the last thing here is the first thing you remember, right?" So the defense gets up; they're going to do their closing argument. Let me just say a couple things about the lead defense attorney. I think she did a good job. Her job, I've been in on several juries, and basically the job of the defense attorney is to confuse the people on the stand. If it's the prosecution's witness, confuse them, make them angry so that their credibility is not intact. They don't look like angels. They don't look like innocent bystanders. They don't look like just I'm objective about all of this. The defense attorney's job is to make them angry so that they become emotional, so that they slip up, so that they make mistakes. And when you make them angry and emotional and confuse them with long questions with multiple caveats to that question, they slip up. And if they don't slip up, if you haven't confused the witness, you've hopefully confused the jury, so that when the jury goes to deliberate, they're like, "What? I don't think that witness was credible because the defense it was just confusing." That's what the defense attorney's job is. It's going ahead and make your case. If you don't have a lot of evidence of your own, you make the case by how you question the prosecution's witnesses, and she did a good job of that, I thought. Unfortunately, a lot of her tactics were shot down. You could tell she was maneuvering those chess pieces, and it just seemed like the prosecution was able to slip upon in front of her or slip something in front of her so that she couldn't go down that line anymore. And but for what it's worth, I thought she did a good job. Would I want her as my defense attorney? I don't know. I don't know. But I thought that she did, for what she had to work with, I think she did a pretty good job of confusing the prosecution's witnesses and trying hard to bring out as many things as she could. I don't think all of her strategies were able to be implemented. I think that she had a lot more planned that just got shut down. So, as far as the prosecuting attorney, I'll get to her when I get to her closing argument. So here's the defense attorney, their closing argument. The defense attorney, just remember, anything that she says or the attorney says is not testimony. It is not evidence, and the jury cannot consider anything that these closing arguments present. We can't talk about those at all, right? Those are not evidence. And so basically what they're going to try to do is sum up things, tie some loose ends together so that you can remember the evidence when you go into the jury room. And so she said, hey, the state failed to make a case on both parts. Remember that those cases where it's a really serious crime or not so serious crime? Said she failed on both. The state didn't meet the requirements for either one of those. There are too many missing pieces. At the beginning, the prosecution, the opening statements, the prosecution had a picture of the Mona Lisa with, it was a puzzle, and there were a bunch of missing puzzle pieces, and she said, but you can still tell it's a Mona Lisa, right? And so the defense attorney kind of brought that up. There's too many missing pieces. You can't tell whether that's the Mona Lisa or not. This case was about the power of persuasion, and she, just going back to her opening argument, said the evidence is all testimony, and that testimony is full of contradictions and non-reliability. Then she brought out some, now this is her opinion, some of the jurors might not think that it was full of contradictions, and some of the jurors might think that it was very reliable. So, but she's trying to convince you, right? This is her last chance to make her argument. She said that the mom was dishonest with the police, and the mom had sex and communications with the defendant until December. She even sent him money. She said that the sexual assault nurse exams said that there was no injury, and that the mom said that there was an injury. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this was just, I'm just thinking to myself, it doesn't matter whether mom said there was an injury. Mom didn't have access to those exams. So anyway, the third point was that there were cameras everywhere these alleged incidents occurred, And she said that the mom said that the cameras were her little spies. And mom did say that. She said that the cameras were her little spies trying to catch the kids in the kitchen, pulling things out of the snack drawer. And that the mom constantly looked at her phone. I don't remember the mom saying that she constantly looked at her phone. She said the camera was immediately installed in Orange County and would have been seen, and everything would have been seen on those cameras. And as someone who has cameras myself, I don't necessarily agree with that. Number 4, the mom testified that she was sexually abused as a child. And that's a lie. Mom did not say that she was sexually abused as a child. That was something that the defendant said about the mom. She said that the mom constantly asked about sexual abuse. That's according to the defendant. That's what the mom did. She said that the little girl, the complainant, never stated that the defendant was involved in the 2018 case in Orange, Texas. And that's true. She didn't state that in those interviews. The defense attorney said that CPS came out and the case was closed, and from the 2018 case, that it was closed, and it was. She said that in August of 2021, there was an allegation that the defendant was the one that did everything, but now the story had changed because the little girl, the complainant, was coached. The next thing was that Grandma did not like the defendant, and she planted the information about the storage unit and the truck and Pasadena in the little girl's head. The next thing was that the DNA expert just put tape on the panties, and it took 2 years. But when the DNA buccal swab was submitted, it took only 7 days, and that's inconsistent. Why does it take 2 years if they're not sure, but 7 days if they really have a suspect and they're going to get this done? The next thing was the DNA expert testified that the mixed DNA was not enough to be uploaded to the national database, whatever that is. And she pointed out the words "with caution" were used, and that the defendant was a possible contributor. The next thing that she said was that the interviewer at that facility in Jefferson County in 2021 could not provide any info regarding the 2018 interviews. Now, this was the 2021 interviewer, and she couldn't provide any information on the 2018 interviews, and she admitted that she could have done better in the 2021 interview. The next one, she attacked the officer who only talked to, this is the 2021 officer, he only talked to Grandma and he didn't talk to the complainant. He didn't talk to the little girl. And that there were inconsistencies with who the little girl was left with. Was it the mom's employee? Was it mom's friend? Was it the attendant at the corner store, the clerk or whatever? She said that those were inconsistencies. She said she could not tell how long Grandma was alone with the little girl, feeding information into her head. This officer could not even tell what the child looked like. And the mom didn't even check on the child when she came back after trying to kill the defendant by running him over. And she said that Grandma didn't even go to the hospital for the sexual assault nursing exam. So she said that's all very suspicious. The next thing, she said that from the beginning, Mom has planted seeds in the little girl's head that someone will touch you. And that even the little girl said horrible things with lots of details. Even though that was the case in her testimony, there was a long time for her to learn those words. And just because of what she had been asked about, she learned those words. The next thing was that the little cousin did not tell the truth. She just lied. And The report was that the defendant laid down instead of sitting down, and instead of the front part, that there was the thigh or the crease. So the little cousin lied, according to the defense attorney. And then she closed up with two more things. The defendant was never home, so he couldn't have done this. It was a little 800 square foot home full of cameras and other people, so he should be found not guilty. And then she was done. What could the defense attorney have done better? I think the defense attorney is, one of her things was that the defendant was never home to do this. I would say if that's the case, you go to his employers and get his employment records and say, here are his hours that he worked. Here's his time cards that prove that he was not home. I would have done that if I was the defense attorney. I would have gotten subpoenas and said, I need those records. I need his employment records. So why didn't she do that? I don't know. Maybe there's something else in the employment records. Maybe they didn't hold up to what that allegation was, that he was working all the time. I would have, she has his phone, as the phone records, and would have found out, where he was, right? You've got these phone records. You can prove where he was when he was there. I would have done that. Instead of just saying I was never home, I would prove it. That's what my advice to the defense attorney would have been. Prove that he wasn't home. I don't think there's anything that the prosecution can do to not have that information presented. If you say, here's from his previous employer, these are his time cards or whatever, and maybe the previous employer just didn't want to come and submit those time cards. Maybe that was the deal. But I would have had that happen. And then it was the prosecutor's turn to give her closing argument. And so about the prosecutor, I think that she did a good job. I think she did a better job than the defense attorney, because she's the one who's calling all the witnesses. What could she have done better? Now, as far as the prosecutor, what could she have done better? The defense is going to try to confuse the jury and the witnesses. And so anytime I talked about something, especially on this case, I would have started almost every question with, in 2018, this happened. In 2018 in Orange, in 2021 in Jefferson County, and I would have made sure that the jury knew exactly what the question was regarding. And as the defense attorney was asking these questions to the witnesses, as soon as she brought up something where she switched from one date to the other, or the witness switched from one date to the other, because that happened quite frequently, well, I would object and I would say, she needs to clarify that exactly when she's asking about. And so I think that would have made things go a lot easier. There was one witness on there where she was almost half, the first DNA witness. Man, she was almost halfway through her testimony before I realized exactly which incident she was testifying about. And so I think that would have been, because this was a little convoluted case with two different jurisdictions, two different dates, 2 different years, 2 different rape kits, 2 different interviews at this facility in Jefferson County. I would have just made sure that everybody knew exactly what you were talking about every single time, and So that's what my advice to the prosecuting attorney would have been. Other than that, I thought you did a great job with what you had. You certainly had the defense attorney not be able to talk about several things, not able to talk about the phone records, wasn't able to bring in the interviews when the little girl was, only 5 years old. I'm sure that probably didn't help your case because she was probably confused in those. So you wouldn't want those done. And just having the people come in and say that they were done, because the primary evidence is the witness, the little girl talking. So I understand why you wouldn't want those videos done. But anyway, there you go. Let's get into the prosecutor's closing statement. She said the defense attorney and her and the jury, watched a different trial. She said, what does the question, because the prosecutor was saying the mom basically suggested all of this stuff constantly to the girl and to the little girl, the complainant enough, the alleged victim enough, that the little girl just came up with all of these things on her own. And so the prosecuting attorney says, well, the question that the mom always asked was, did he touch you? Did you touch you? Did you get touched? No? Are you sure he didn't touch you? Okay. And so that does not cover, that question does not explain. Wait a second. I have to jump in here for just a second. The prosecuting attorney in her closing arguments wanted to make sure that the jury remembered all of the things that the little girl, the complainant, went over in detail in her testimony. And so she is making this comparison. If you're just being asked if you got touched, how does that explain all of these other things that the little girl talked about? The little girl talked about A, she talked about B, she talked about C. And the prosecutor was very detailed and graphic in her bringing up those specifics. And so I really can't have those things in the video. I think just listing them all would probably, YouTube would not let this video air. So I'm going to just say that if you go back and look at the testimony from the little girl, the little complainant, the prosecutor brought all of those things up and the implications of all of those things as well. And so I'm not going to have that blatantly said in this video, but that's what she was talking about. Let's get back to her closing statement. She said that the little girl was asked over 100 questions, so many events, so frequently that ran together, that she did great. She said that he is a father figure, he is a disciplinarian, he was a manipulative, he was able to manipulate mom, even when her daughter was raped, he was still able to manipulate the mom. Mom would not leave the defendant. He was a master manipulator, basically. And you're going to need to know how to do this when you're older, was what he told the little girl. And she said, well, when is the little cousin being persuaded? The mom's not asking the cousin all the time. When is she being persuaded? And the cousin asked, is he gone? And then, why is he gone? And then she's thinking, is it because of what happened to me? And then, after she said that what he did to her, then she found out what happened to the little girl, the complainant. She's not worried about the defendant's son. That is an Orange County issue. They live in Jefferson County. We're in Jefferson County. Said she's not worried about anything that has to do with the defendant's son. The complainant said that this is about the defendant. The little cousin said that it was the stepdad, and the defendant said that he was the only stepdad. So we can use the little cousin to show as an example that the defendant is into little kids. The defense is saying that the little girl made all this up. And but you cannot pick apart any portion of that little girl's story. That's the prosecuting attorney's statement. Prosecuting attorney went on. She said that the little girl's description of the truck and people coming by and the defendant pulling up his pants, you can't explain that just by being asked, did they touch you? And then she got a little Post-it note, put it on her podium, and said, okay, so what do you do about the cameras? Then she just kind of moved and said, you just stand out of view. You know where the cameras are. You can put something on the camera. You wouldn't check the cameras if the defendant is home. Why would the mom check? If she trusted the defendant, why would she check the cameras? You just adjust the camera a little bit to the left or the right, and it won't see it. There's no cameras in the bathroom. Several of these alleged instances happened in the bathroom. Some of them happened while the mom was asleep. There were none at the storage building. There were none of the cameras in the woods. And when talking about the woods, look at the little girl's description of the woods as well. The mom and grandma are not on the same page. Because of that, they could not collude. There were different dates, different houses, different counties, different acts, and the little girl covered all of those. How does DNA appear in panties 3 years ago if this is all about suggestion? She brought up that it's 140 times greater. Are there 140 people in the house? She asked that. If it's because of a washing machine, why aren't 6 people's DNA on her panties instead of just the defendant? And then she brought up the defendant said that it's either his version or her version. The defendant said that he put up his house for sale or auction before he moved to Jefferson County. Well, how does the little girl know about the empty house if he had not taken her there? She said the defendant was present when the sexual assault nurse exam, the SANE exam, was done, and she said that the defendant was present in the 2018 interviews, and he was there because his presence would suppress or intimidate the little girl so that she didn't say everything. And finally, the little girl got sick of it and said that she was tired of it. The defendant said that he had no time for any of these rapes to happen. And then he said that it took 3.5 hours to drive 108 miles. And so he's not telling the truth, is the implication. Said the defendant overestimated his lack of time, and the defendant took her places. And he said that he took her places. And the mom's character has no bearing on this case. And the little girl described the things that she experienced. And then she said, do not let him get away with this for the little girl or her cousin. And then the jury, I'm juror number 8, we were allowed to go into another room where our instructions are assign a jury foreperson, and then, one buzz for a question, 2 buzzes for a verdict. We have a little buzzer on the wall. And so the 12 of us got in there. We sat down. This is a multi-day trial where we might not know each other's names yet, but we're friendly with one another. We talk about, grandkids and things like that. And so we sat down, and I just, after everyone's seated, I said, well, the first thing we're supposed to do is get a jury foreperson. Has anyone ever been foreperson of a jury before? And, everyone shook their head no. And I said, well, I've been on 2 juries where I was the foreperson of 2 other juries. So if no one really wants it, I'll take it. And the lady next to me said, well, if you don't want it, I'll take it. And I was like, I'm okay doing it, but if someone really wants it, unless someone really wants it, I'll go on ahead and do it. And so I'm the jury foreperson. And so the first question I asked was, so does everyone have a pretty certain verdict in their mind of what, it is? You already have a gut feeling about this. And everybody was like, yeah, I've got a gut feeling about this already. And so, full disclosure, my gut feeling was that the defendant was guilty. And we'll get into that as we talk about the jury discussions, probably the next video. But so I'm just kind of thinking on top of my head, maybe everybody thinks he's guilty. And I said, so this is a really important thing. So let's go ahead and, we've got all these stipulations that we've got to think about. Instead of just saying guilty without really considering them, I think we need to consider them. And so, what are the sex acts that, you think that he committed? Which part of the little girl's testimony do you think was true regarding the exact sex acts? And one of the other jurors started going through a list, and then one of the other jurors said, well, I'm just not sure. It has to be beyond reasonable doubt, and I've got reasonable doubt. And then it was like, and then I thought, oh, it's not going to be unanimous. Okay, so we are going to have to discuss this. And so he had a great idea. This is what I should have done to begin with. He said, let's go ahead and do an anonymous vote real quick. And so we did an anonymous vote. And the initial vote was 8 guilty and 4 not guilty. And so it became pretty obvious, the 4 that said not guilty. And so we just kind of discussed, okay, well, what are the things that give you reasonable doubt? And so he went through the things that were giving him reasonable doubt, and valid points. This is his personal opinion that he doubts those things, and that's what the jury is there for, though, to discuss those things. And then another person started saying things that was reasonable doubt, and another person started saying things about why he had to be guilty, and they were bringing in all these other things. And so I just said, let me just read our instructions again. And the instructions are very explicit that you can only make your decision based on the evidence that was presented, not based on what the attorneys say, not based on the questions that the attorneys asked, only on the evidence, only on what the witnesses said, only on the evidence that was submitted. Things that were not submitted, you can't, that's not evidence. Just because it's not there and you wanted it to be there, its lack of being there is not evidence. What happened to you, your personal knowledge, is not evidence. And we can only consider the evidence. And so that kind of reined things back in because we were getting off a little bit. Not that I'm, this control freak or anything, or not that it was all me, but we just kind of need to focus on the the trial and the judge's instructions. And so I said, well, let's just go through and, because do we all agree that this all hinges on whether or not we believe what the little complainant, the little girl, said in her testimony. It all hinges on her testimony. Do you believe it or not? And at the very beginning of the trial, when we were being selected to be on the jury, that was one of the questions. Can you convict someone based solely on the victim's testimony? Can you, if you believe the victim beyond the shadow of a doubt, is that enough for you to convict? And so that's what we need to do. We need to determine if we believe the little girl beyond the shadow of a doubt. And so then we started going through each witness. We went through Mom. Mom was the very first witness. Is there anything that Mom said, regardless of how extreme it was or how in line that it was, that would make you not believe what the little girl said? Anything that Mom contradicts, anything like that. Is there anything that Mom said that would make you not believe the little girl? And there really wasn't. So we're just going through our witnesses, just one at a time. And so that was one of the things we talked about. Anything that the mom said that going to make us not believe the little girl. And there's really not. We talked about the mom quite a bit, parenting and things like that, but none of those things impact what the little girl said. So we skipped by Mom and we went to the next interview. And the next interview was the DNA forensic expert, the DNA forensic scientist. We brought up that this was from 2020, and she had 5 years experience. And so this is 2023. So she got started in 2018 if she has 5 years experience, right? And the evidence is from 2018. But by the time she saw it, it was 2020. So she had more than a year of experience. And so we talked about that. We talked about she looked for sperm. And, what if somebody's had a vasectomy? There's not going to be sperm there, and you're looking for sperm. We talked about the underwear with stains on it, and what does that mean? Does that actually influence the little girl's testimony? And it really doesn't. And a lot of people talked about the DNA, the lack of hardcore DNA that proves that the defendant molested the little girl, semen, something like that. There wasn't any. He is basically, 140 times more likely than someone else. But is that enough? And it goes back to what the prosecuting attorney asked when we were being selected. If you believe the witness beyond the shadow of a doubt, do you need something else? And we all said no. We don't need something else. So, we need to make sure that we remember that. And I don't know if that's going to be the deciding factor or not. If we bring that up and we talk about the little girl's testimony, and if we say, well, do you believe it beyond the shadow of a doubt or not? And they say, no, I don't. What are we going to do? I don't know. We can have a hung jury, I guess. And if we have a hung jury, we have a hung jury. You just do your best. And if they retry the case because it's a hung jury, maybe the prosecutor will know better questions to ask. Questions like, do you need to have corroborating evidence in order to make someone's testimony be beyond a reasonable doubt? Or can the testimony itself be beyond a reasonable doubt? So I think that would have been a better question for the prosecutor when she was asking questions in voir dire. Anyway, the third witness was the former police officer from this little town in Jefferson County, and that he had not, talked to the little girl. Is there anything that he could have said or done that would have influenced our believability, how much we believe the little girl? And there really wasn't. And then we talked about the grandma, and the grandma not going to the SANE exam, and there were some jurors that were like, I don't know what kind of grandma that is. I would have gone. I would have. My daughter wouldn't have told me I ain't going. I'm going, and there are some people that do that, But if my son said, hey, we believe this might have happened to one of your grandkids, and I don't want you to go to the hospital, I would have said, okay. I would want to be there, but if I would respect his decision, he's the parent. So, it's just different opinions on that. But regardless, nothing really that grandma said is going to affect whether or not we believe the little girl. And then we got to the forensic nurse who did the basically the rape kit, the SANE exam, in 2021. So she'd been doing that since 2020. So for about a year, and your first one or 2 months, even 3 months, maybe a little bit iffy, but it's been a year, so I'm sure she's gotten used to this. She's good at her job now. And we talked about the history. A couple of things that we talked about were that because the allegation was for things that were more than 5 days ago, more than 120 hours ago, they were just checking for sexually transmitted diseases, urinary tract infections, tears, things like that. And that there were no injuries. And we talked about that for a minute, that some of the people on the jury were like, there had to be injuries if this actually happened. And so we just brought up, well, the medical expert says, no, there don't have to be injuries. Are you the medical expert? Are you going to go off of what the evidence is or not? And so that was a good discussion. The medical experts say that, the resiliency of a young child, they heal quickly and they're able to adapt. And so that was a good conversation in the jury room. The other thing was that she said, once my dad and mom broke up, he did not do it again. And so we're just assuming that it's the last time that they broke up. And so she was asked about ejaculation. Did stuff come out? And they talked a little bit about the normal variant of the hymen, and just we reiterated that even if you have babies, your hymen is still intact. That it's just a, we didn't say an old wives' tale or whatever, but it's just a misnomer. And that was an education to me that the hymen, you can't tell if someone's a virgin or not. You just can't. Period. Medically, you cannot tell if someone is a virgin because the hymen doesn't break and it's now broken or something like that. That's not how it works. And so then we get to the witness that was the forensic nurse from 1998. And everybody seemed to like her because now we know what SANE stands for: Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner, or examination. And we liked how this nurse put things into perspective and said that, you know, just because a child said it hurt, it's not going to be a lingering hurt because they heal quickly. And if it was a stranger assault, you know, you would have lasting effects because they're not going to take their time and be gentle. But a known assaultant, they're going to be gentle so that they can keep on going. Blunt force is more likely to have lingering pain. And so it is common for victims to love the perpetrators. And so the witness was talking about it's common for the sexual victims, this little girl, to love her dad, the defendant. And we went on and talked about it, and it's also common for, you know, adults to love the perpetrators too. And we were talking about the mom and the defendant. So, then we were about to talk about the detective, and the bailiff came and knocked on the door and said, "Y'all are done, and we're going to have to come back on Monday." But so that's what we're doing. We're just going witness by witness and seeing if anything they said contradicts what the little girl's testimony was, because it really is about her testimony. Do we believe that or not? If we don't believe her testimony, do we believe the defendant's testimony? And is there anything in the defendant's testimony that doesn't make sense? So there we go. This is a hard case. And if you haven't seen the other videos, all the other videos for all the other days of testimony are in the description. If you know how this all turns out, you'll know that this was I don't know how it turns out yet, because I've still got another day or two of deliberations with the rest of the jury panel. But when we left, we did say that it is a great panel, and we are all getting along just splendidly. I've been on juries where we didn't get all along just splendidly, and but this one we have some disagreements, but that's okay, because you're going to have disagreements, and our job is to come into agreement not at the start but at the very finish. And so if some people change their mind, they change their mind, and if they don't, they don't. You can't make them change their mind, and maybe I'm wrong and I'll change my mind. You have to be open to changing your mind if someone points out something that makes more sense. So anyway, there we go. Stay tuned for the next video. If you haven't watched the previous ones, watch those. This is the That's Jesus channel, and basically we're just talking about how Christian man, me, is going through jury duty on a case that is so raw like this one. This is a hard case to be on a jury for, and so lots of prayers involved. And I'm praying that the Lord gives me wisdom and discernment, and that the jury comes together as a united voice to say that he is absolutely not guilty or he absolutely is, and that everyone leaves and they can have their decision 10 years from now saying that was the right decision. So I'm Bob Balch with the That's Jesus channel. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day and be blessed.